Right now, if you feel a sore throat coming on, you reach for medicine. You check a label. You trust a system built by scientists you'll never meet. For almost all of human history, none of that existed. No pharmacies, no doctors with diplomas, no germ theory. So what did people actually do when they got sick? Imagine waking up 200,000 years ago with a fever. Your body is burning, your throat feels like sandpaper, and there's no thermometer, no Google, nothing to tell you what's happening inside you. All you have is your tribe, your instincts, and whatever plants happen to be growing nearby. And somehow, humans survived, thrived even, enough to eventually become you. So how? Start with this. Ancient humans weren't stupid. They were observant because survival demanded it. If someone ate a certain berry and dropped dead, that information traveled fast. Word of mouth was the first medical database humanity ever had. The anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that this kind of shared, accumulated knowledge is part of what set humans apart from every other species. Your ancestors were basically running experiments on the natural world, except the failure condition wasn't a bad grade. It was death. Some of those experiments worked. Willow bark, chewed or boiled, eased pain and brought down fevers. We know why now. It contains salicin, which the body converts into something close to aspirin. Nobody understood the chemistry. They just knew it worked, and that was enough to keep doing it. There's archaeological evidence for plant-based medicine stretching back tens of thousands of years. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, researchers found a Neanderthal burial surrounded by pollen from plants with medicinal uses, including yarrow and chamomile. For decades, this was held up as proof Neanderthals practiced herbal medicine, though some scientists have since pushed back, arguing the pollen could have gotten there naturally. Honestly, even the argument makes the point. Neanderthals lived surrounded by these plants, and separate studies of their dental plaque have found traces of chamomile and yarrow in their teeth, alongside signs they ate bitter, nutritionally useless plants specifically because of how those plants made them feel. A species without writing, without anything we'd call language in the modern sense, was already doing something that looks a lot like early pharmacology. Before agriculture, before cities, the instinct to treat illness with what's growing around you is older than civilization. But plants were only one piece of it. When someone in a hunter-gatherer group got sick, it wasn't just their problem. It was everyone's problem. If one person couldn't hunt or gather, the whole group felt it. So illness triggered something beyond medicine. It triggered care. Researchers studying groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Kung in southern Africa have watched this play out directly. When someone falls ill, others step in immediately, sharing food, covering their work, sitting with them for days if needed. It's not just kindness. A group that lets sick members fend for themselves loses knowledge and labor it can't easily replace. A group that looks after its sick tends to last longer. Some researchers go further and argue this is one of the roots of human empathy itself, not as some nice extra, but as a survival mechanism. Groups of other primates often abandon injured members. Early humans increasingly didn't. Here's where it gets strange, though. Ancient people didn't just treat illness with plants and care. They treated it with story and ritual. If you have no concept of viruses or bacteria, sickness is a mystery, and mysteries are frightening. So cultures filled the gap. Angry spirits, curses, bad luck, ancestors displeased with you. These weren't just superstitions for their own sake. They were frameworks, something to hold onto when your body turned on you for no visible reason. And those frameworks came with rituals, chanting, dancing, specific healers doing specific things at specific times. It's tempting to write this off as primitive nonsense, but ritual reduces stress, and stress makes illness worse. Cortisol suppresses immune function. So a ritual that calmed someone down, gave them a sense of control, and put the whole community's attention on them may have genuinely improved their odds. Not by curing anything directly, but by working on the mind, which works on the body. Modern medicine took a surprisingly long time to take this seriously. The placebo effect was treated for decades as an annoyance, something to be controlled for in drug trials rather than studied on its own terms. But research from people like Ted Kapchuk at Harvard has shown placebo responses can produce real, measurable changes. Less pain, less inflammation, different patterns of brain activity. Ancient healers obviously didn't have this vocabulary, but it's possible they were tapping into the same effect for tens of thousands of years, just wrapped in ceremony instead of clinical language. Put it all together, and ancient sickness care had three layers. A chemical layer, plants with real active compounds. A social layer, people stepping in to keep you fed and protected long enough to recover. And a psychological layer, rituals and stories that lowered stress and may have helped the body do its own work. All three running at once with no hospital in sight. And here's the part that should bother you a little. Modern medicine often strips away two of those three layers. You see a doctor, get a diagnosis, get a prescription. The chemical layer has never been stronger, but the social layer and the ritual layer, often just gone. You get handed a bottle and sent home, alone. That seems to matter more than we like to admit. Studies on hospital patients have repeatedly found that social isolation during illness correlates with worse recovery, longer stays, and higher rates of depression. Loneliness isn't only emotionally unpleasant. It seems to leave a mark on how the body heals. So in a roundabout way, people with zero understanding of microbiology may have stumbled onto something medicine is only now circling back to. Healing isn't purely chemical. It's relational too. Think about the last time you were really sick. What did you actually want? Medicine, sure, but also someone checking on you, someone bringing soup, someone just sitting nearby, even if there was nothing they could fix. That pull toward company when you're unwell isn't a weakness. It's old. It's the same instinct that kept a fevered hunter-gatherer alive 100,000 years ago, surrounded by people who weren't about to let them go through it alone. There's another piece of this that doesn't get talked about much. Diet itself was medicine long before anyone drew a line between the two. Ancient diets were far more varied than what most people eat now. Roots, leaves, bark, fruit, insects, fermented foods, and a lot of that variety did things to the immune system in small doses. Fermented food is especially interesting. People were eating foods alive with bacteria long before anyone knew bacteria existed. And we now know gut bacteria play a huge role in immune function, mood, and inflammation throughout the body. Ancient humans were, without realizing it, maintaining their own internal defenses just by eating the way they always had. Then agriculture happened, and diets narrowed. Fewer plant varieties, more grain, less of that messy, bacteria-rich variety hunter-gatherers relied on. Some researchers tie this shift to health changes we're still trying to understand. None of this means ancient humans had it figured out. They didn't. Life expectancy was short, and plenty of infections that are trivial today were death sentences. But the systems they built around illness, diet, plants, social bonds, ritual, weren't random. They were the product of countless lives and deaths, refined because someone, somewhere, survived and passed it on. Illness even seems to have shaped how groups organize themselves. Some anthropologists think the need to care for sick members influenced where and how early humans settled. A mobile group could outrun trouble, but a sick person often couldn't travel. So groups had to choose, stay and risk it, or move on and leave someone behind. Skeletal evidence shows plenty of ancient people survived injuries and illnesses that would have kept them out of action for weeks or months, which means someone carried them, fed them, protected them, for no return except keeping that person alive. That's not a minor detail. Some researchers treat it as one of the foundations of human social life. Even death got this treatment. When someone didn't make it, burial often involved careful placement, grave goods, sometimes the same medicinal plants mentioned earlier. Not just respect for the dead, some anthropologists read it as an early attempt to make sense of loss, to build a framework around something nobody could control. Grief needed structure too, and people built one long before anyone wrote anything down. Zoom out, and what you're left with is a system. Not a clean scientific one by modern standards, but a system all the same, built from millions of small decisions, tested against the worst possible consequences, refined over generations, and still visible in you. The part of you that wants soup when you're sick. The part that feels better just knowing someone's checking in. The part that reaches for ginger tea or honey without anyone explaining why. None of that is random. It's inherited, not through DNA, but through tens of thousands of years of behavior, handed down by people who never knew you, but were, in a real sense, looking out for you before you existed. So next time you feel that scratch in your throat and reach for the medicine cabinet, remember, you're doing what your ancestors did, just with better tools and a better understanding of why they work. But if you actually want to heal the way humans were built to heal, the medicine was never the whole story. It was always about who sits with you while your body does its work.